I note from one of your communiques, the Basin Authority, that you met with Richard Beasley, the South Australian Commissioner for the Murray.
Yes, Senator.
Can you enlighten me on his brief to the authority?
Yeah, certainly, Senator. So Mr Beasley was appointed by the South Australian Government as the River Murray Commissioner, and his task is to advocate for South Australia and report to the South Australian Parliament on an annual basis. So upon his appointment, Sir Angus Houston, the Chair of the authority, and myself met with the Deputy Premier and Mr Beasley to understand his brief, and the principal outcome of that was to invite him to have further briefs with the MDBA, the various component parts, river operations, water accounting and the like. And then he, after receiving those briefings, spoke to the authority briefly, and it was really, his expression was one of obviously wanting to represent strongly the interests of South Australia in the task of water recovery, and requested that we have a good and open relationship and a flow of information to him should he request it. It was very introductory, Senator, and really nothing more than that.
So there was no formal exchange of letters or
no, there's no
from the state, which is where I'm trying to...
No, Senator. So Mr Beasley is appointed by the South Australian Government and works to the South Australian Parliament. In terms of his relationship with the MDBA, we have agreed that he come and talk to the authority on a 6-monthly basis, but that's an informal arrangement, not a formal arrangement.
I'm not seeking to criticise the
meeting.
No, has he or the South Australian Government, post its election, formally put to the authority its position or restated its position of the state in relation to the operation of the plan?
No, Senator.
No. So I could take from that, it's from a South Australian perspective, as I understand it, we're holding the line from your perspective.
Sorry, Senator, I'm not sure.
Well, from your perspective, the South Australian position hasn't changed.
That's correct, Senator.
Yeah, about the operation of the plan.
That's correct.
Can I ask the Secretary, have you received any correspondence from Mr Beasley in relation to his appointment and or the position of the state?
I don't believe I have, but if any of my officials can assist me on that one, otherwise I'll take that on notice.
Senator, I don't recall receiving anything.
I don't know if there is, I'm just simply asking.
No. There was obviously a public announcement by the
Correct.
South Australian Government at the time, so we were clearly aware of that, yes.
I'll take on notice the formal
Yes,
question.
thank you. If it exists, I'd call for it, and you can make your decision on whether you'd release it. Minister, can I put that question to you, whether there's been a formal correspondence between the Commissioner and the government, federal government?
I'll take it on notice. It's obviously
yes.
wouldn't have come to me had it happened,
No,
but I'll take it on notice.
I appreciate your answer, and can I call for it if in fact it exists? It may be a letter of introduction, but obviously I'm interested if it's a statement of the government's intention in respect of its relationship with the department, the authority, and obviously the government. There may only be one letter.
Yeah.
Is there any other correspondence? I'm going back to the authority, so I'm sorry, I'm shopping around a little. Between yourself and the Commissioner at this stage, other than formal or informal?
No, Senator, there's not.
Okay. Is there any schedule of meetings between yourself, the authority, and Mr Beasley scheduled going forward?
Senator, we haven't scheduled them for next year, but there is a commitment of the authority and with Mr Beasley to meet on about a 6-monthly basis, so that would point to perhaps another catch-up in around about May next year.
So that okay, and when that meeting occurs, obviously you'll be putting that in your communique?
That's correct, Senator.
So that the public are aware of,
correct.
of some transparency around the meetings.
Correct.
That's good. I don't raise those questions to at all be critical of Mr Beasley. Now, my new Premier issued a media release regarding a 6-point action plan for the Murray, but he also indicated that he was contemplating legal action to defend the rights of my state. has there been any correspondence between the South Australian Government and the Federal Government regarding a demand or setting out his particular concerns where he feels he needs to resort to legal action? Perhaps I'll start with the authority and I'll sort of move
Sure.
to,
So no, in terms of the
your right.
authority, we've received no correspondence from the South Australian Premier.
I'll go to the Secretary.
I was ready. And I'll give the same answer. I'll
Yes.
check with my officials, but otherwise I will take it on notice.
Yes, I'll
Minister.
take it on notice.
Yes.
So for the
And again, I
residents
call
to
for it
know
if it exists or if it happens. Could, from the perspective, maybe I'll go to the Secretary, there has been concerns, regardless of political persuasion of leader in my state, a concern about the operation of the plan, and occasionally leaders have reflected about legal action. Has the department done any work in relation to the possibilities of legal cause from my state in relation to enforcing their perceived rights or the crossing of their rights?
So I think that's a question I'll need my officials to answer.
Yeah, I think Senator...
He didn't articulate necessarily his actual cause of action, so I'm asking from being an old lawyer.
Yeah, but any advice we constructed would be in relationship to the cause of action. So,
What would the cause of action be?
well, I can't proffer what that would be.
Has there been any work? I mean, you can take it on notice. Any work around the fact that certain states may have legal rights which they could seek to enforce in relation to the plan? I mean, I would have thought someone's actually had to think about it.
Yeah, so Senator, the Basin Plan is obviously a complex document with a range of water recovery targets and other obligations on the part of states, so obligations to prepare water resource plans, obligations to provide information in relation to water accounts, obligations to provide information in relation to water trade. So there are a raft of issues against which states are required to perform.
It's
not easy to answer the question, I think.
It really depends on the course of what the action is, and that is not specific. So
I appreciate I'm a little bit unfair in some ways. From your perspective, it would be probably the enforcement of the statutory obligations in the plan. I was just thinking whether there'd be any other causes of action outside and common law rights or
I can't
existing.
I can't project.
Just on that. So I think in fairness to you, it's a proper question. It's hard for us to answer because I think in the generality, we wouldn't really start focusing until we had a level of specificity, which I think is becoming apparent we don't have. And so I think it's probably legitimate to...
Well, I appreciate you wait for the court, for the litigation to come, and it may not come because it may be settled with council of government meetings. But at the same time, I'm interested whether your department had reflected on it and whether there is any existing discussion around enforcement of rights as we get closer to the due date for the plan.
I think in fairness, what I'll do on that is I'll take it formally on notice.
Yeah, and if there's anything you can assist me in my understanding, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
What's the legal obligation to meet the plan on full and on time?
So, Senator, there are, as we've talked about before, there are various components of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. So in relation to the Sustainable Diversion Limit Adjustment Mechanism projects, there's a framework to deal with and assess what those projects deliver in terms of outcomes, and that's the reconciliation framework that Mr Conville referred to before. And one of the potential outcomes of that reconciliation process is the authority making a recommendation to the Minister about how the Basin Plan might be adjusted.
Just to back to the authority, did Mr Beasley, were there any minutes taken of that meeting?
Yes, Senator, there would.
Could I call for those? Will I call for them?
Can I take that on notice,
Yes.
Senator?
And if in fact you're claiming public interest immunity, could I ask it be referred to the Minister so we don't have to come back
Certainly,
for
Senator.
that process to take its inevitable journey?
Senator, so just back to your previous...
You mean the agency that's responsible for transparency here?
Yes, just covering off the technicalities. Oh, my colleague.
Senator, if I might just refer you to the role of the Inspector General of Water Compliance. So the Inspector General became a statutory function under the Water Act last year, and understand the Acting Inspector General is scheduled to give evidence later this afternoon.
Yes, I appreciate that, and thank you for your guidance. But just to my last question, if that's...
Certainly,
okay.
I'm dying to know where you're going.
If, as I understand your contribution, if a Premier says he's going to take legal action, you're simply going to wait for the letter of demand and the proceedings to be issued. The department hasn't done any work necessarily to anticipate response. I don't ask that in criticism, I ask it.
It's not accurate.
Yeah.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Fredericks.
I don't take it as a criticism.
Yeah.
But it isn't accurate. At the end of the day, I've said I'd take that on notice.
Yeah, no,
because
I
I think, in
appreciate-
fairness, I want to give you a proper answer to that question.
I was just clarifying for myself. I'll hand back to you, Chair.